The holographic display cast a soft blue glow across Dr. Jasmine Reeves's face as she studied the genetic sequence floating before her. The Global Genetic Research Institute's midnight shift suited her, fewer interruptions, more time to think. Outside her lab's reinforced windows, Singapore's skyline sparkled against the pre-dawn darkness, its fusion-powered towers reaching toward the stars like crystalline fingers. Dr. Reeves, the lab's AI system chimed, "There's an unscheduled visitor requesting entry." Security clearance, diplomatic. Jasmine frowned. Diplomatic clearance at 3 a.m. was unusual enough to be interesting. Identity? Tarn of the Meridian Science Council. Her fingers froze over the console. The Meridians had made first contact just 18 months ago, their crystalline ships appearing in high orbit with no warning. Their biology was unlike anything Earth had ever encountered, silicon-based life forms with bodies that seemed to exist in a state between solid and liquid crystal. "Send them in," she said, straightening her lab coat. The door whispered open, revealing a figure that made Jasmine's breath catch. Tarn stood nearly 7 feet tall, their crystalline body refracting the lab's lights into countless rainbow patterns across the walls. Their form was vaguely humanoid but fluid, shifting between states of matter with each movement. "Dr. Reeves," Tarn's voice resonated like crystal singing bowls, "thank you for receiving me at this unusual hour." "Most of my hours are unusual," Jasmine replied, gesturing to a reinforced chair designed for non-human visitors. "What brings a member of the Meridian Science Council to my lab?" Tarn's body rippled, colors shifting from clear to deep azure. "We require your expertise in genetic engineering. Specifically, your work on preserving genetic stability in extreme environments." Jasmine's recent paper on that topic wasn't even published yet. "How did you know about that research?" "We have been watching Earth's scientific progress very carefully," Tarn's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Your species' adaptability is remarkable." "Flattery suggests you want something complicated," Jasmine said, leaning against her desk. "What's the real reason for your visit?" Tarn's crystalline surface clouded briefly. "My species is dying, Dr. Reeves. Our genetic structure is degrading at an accelerating rate. Within 3 generations, we face extinction." The bluntness of the statement caught Jasmine off guard. "I'm not sure how I can help. Your biology is fundamentally different from anything I've worked with." "Different, yes. But the principles of genetic stability you've pioneered could be adapted." Tarn extended a crystalline appendage, and a holographic projection appeared between them, showing complex molecular structures. "This is our current problem." Jasmine stepped closer, fascination overriding caution. The structures were beautiful, lattices of silicon-based molecules arranged in patterns that somehow supported consciousness. But there were clear signs of degradation, like cracks spreading through a crystal. "Fascinating," she murmured. "But why come to me directly? This should go through proper diplomatic channels." "Time is not our ally," Tarn's voice carried an edge of desperation. "Diplomatic channels move too slowly. We need someone willing to think beyond conventional boundaries." "Beyond conventional boundaries often means beyond ethical ones," Jasmine said carefully. "I'm not comfortable." "Comfort is a luxury my species cannot afford," Tarn interrupted, their form shifting to a deeper blue. "We offer a trade, help us solve our crisis, and we share our knowledge of crystal computing. Technology centuries beyond your current capabilities." Jasmine's mind raced with the implications. Crystal computing could revolutionize everything from medical imaging to space travel. But rushing into cross-species genetic manipulation without proper oversight. "I'll need to consult with Director Sullivan," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make alone." "Of course," Tarn's form brightened slightly. "But remember, Dr. Reeves, every moment of delay costs lives. My people are counting on you." As if to emphasize the point, Tarn's body flickered, momentarily losing coherence. The slip was subtle, but Jasmine caught it, signs of the very degradation they were discussing. "I'll review your data tonight," she promised. "But I make no guarantees. Understanding is all we ask for now." Tarn rose, their crystalline form catching the light. "We believe your species calls it hope." After Tarn left, Jasmine stared at the genetic data still floating in the air. The complexity was overwhelming, but the challenge was irresistible. She reached for her comm unit. "Connect me to Dr. Foster," she said. Priority channel. Benjamin Foster had been her mentor since graduate school. If anyone could help her navigate the ethical minefield ahead, it was him. "Jasmine," his sleep-roughened voice came through. "It's the middle of the night. Ben, I need your advice. How do you feel about saving an alien species?" There was a long pause. "I feel like I should pour a drink before you continue." "Make it a double," Jasmine said, watching Tarn's genetic data spiral in the air before her. "This is going to be a long night." Dawn painted Singapore's skyline in shades of amber when director Marcus Sullivan arrived at the institute. His expression matched the thunderclouds gathering on the horizon as he strode into Jasmine's lab, where she and Dr. Foster had been working through the night. A private meeting with a Meridian representative, Sullivan's voice was carefully controlled. "Do you understand the diplomatic nightmare you've created?" Jasmine gestured to the complex genetic models floating above her workstation. "With respect, Director, we don't have time for diplomatic protocols. Look at this." The holographic display showed the progressive degradation of Meridian genetic structures across generations. Ben Foster, his silver hair disheveled from the all-night analysis, pointed to a particular sequence. "The degradation isn't natural," he said. "These patterns suggest artificial manipulation at some point in their past. Someone engineered this into their species." Sullivan's anger shifted to concern. "Engineered? By whom? That's the question, isn't it?" Jasmine manipulated the display, highlighting specific markers. "The degradation is too precise, too targeted. It's affecting their ability to maintain stable crystalline forms, but only after several generations of seemingly perfect health. A time bomb in their genetic code," Ben mused. "But why would anyone?" The lab doors whispered open, revealing Tarn. Their crystalline form seemed duller than the previous night, with subtle fracture lines visible beneath the surface. "Because we did it to ourselves," Tarn's resonant voice carried a note of ancient grief. "Or rather, our ancestors did." Sullivan straightened. "You knew about this?" "I suspected." Tarn's form rippled with colors that seemed to convey shame. "But confirmation required human expertise in genetic engineering. Your species excels at seeing patterns we have become blind to." Jasmine felt a chill despite the lab's carefully regulated temperature. "Why would your ancestors engineer their own extinction?" "Not extinction," Tarn corrected. "Evolution. They believed they could force our species to transcend its physical form through carefully planned genetic degradation. The crystal computing technology we offered in trade? It was meant to be our future home, a silicon-based digital consciousness. But it didn't work," Ben said softly. "No. The degradation began as planned, but the consciousness transfer proved impossible. Now we are trapped in failing bodies, watching our children's children face extinction because of our ancestors' hubris." Sullivan paced the lab, his reflection fragmenting across the various screens and surfaces. "Why come to Earth? Surely your species has geneticists." "Our scientists are too close to the problem," Tarn's form flickered momentarily. "And there is another factor. We believe human genetic adaptability might hold the key to our salvation." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "What aren't you telling us?" Tarn's surface clouded. "There was a subset of our population that proved resistant to the degradation. They had one thing in common, distant hybrid ancestry with another species. You think human DNA might stabilize your genetic structure," Jasmine said, the implications dawning on her. "That's why you chose me." My work on cross-species genetic compatibility could save my people, Tarn finished. But it would require a deep exchange of genetic material between our species. The ethical implications are staggering, Sullivan interrupted. The risks to both species are worth considering against the certainty of our extinction, Tarn countered. Their forms suddenly destabilized, liquid crystal dripping onto the floor before being reabsorbed. That was not for dramatic effect. Our degradation accelerates. I estimate 3 months before I lose cohesion permanently. Jasmine shared a look with Ben, seeing her own scientific fascination and ethical concerns reflected in his tired eyes. The potential breakthroughs in genetic engineering were enormous, but so were the risks. Director, she said carefully, I request permission to establish a joint research team. Full transparency, full documentation, but with expedited protocols. Sullivan studied the genetic models still rotating in the air. The Council will never approve this in time. Then don't ask for approval, Ben suggested. Ask for forgiveness. That's a hell of a risk, Dr. Foster. Sometimes the biggest risks carry the biggest rewards, Jasmine said, her mind already racing with possibilities. We could learn more about genetic engineering in 3 months than we have in the past century. Sullivan was quiet for a long moment, watching Tarn's increasingly unstable form. 2 conditions. First, Dr. Foster oversees all ethical considerations. Second, at the first sign this could harm humanity, we shut it down. Agreed, Tarn said quickly, too quickly. Jasmine caught the subtle shift in their crystalline pattern, a ripple that might have been relief or triumph. She filed the observation away, adding it to her growing list of questions about their new alien partners. We'll need a secure facility, she said. And I want to meet these hybrid-descended meridians. Their genetic stability could be crucial to solving this. That. Tarn hesitated. May be difficult. They are not easily accessible. Another evasion. Another question for the list. Make it happen, Sullivan said. I'll handle the paperwork. Just, try not to start an interspecies incident before breakfast. As he left, Ben moved closer to Jasmine. You saw that hesitation about the hybrids? She nodded. Something's not adding up. But with their lives on the line. We help them, Ben finished. But we keep our eyes open. Always, Jasmine agreed, turning back to the genetic models. They had 3 months to save a species, or discover why that species might not want to be saved. 2 months into the project, Jasmine stared at her lab results in disbelief. The secure facility they'd established in the Institute's sublevels had become her second home, its sterile white walls decorated with hovering displays of genetic data. But these latest results changed everything. Run it again, she ordered the AI system. Full spectrum analysis. Reanalysis complete, the AI responded after a moment. Results consistent with previous scan. Genetic markers indicate deliberate modification within the last 30 years. Jasmine sank into her chair. The Meridians hadn't just engineered their genetic degradation centuries ago, someone had actively accelerated it recently. But why? The lab doors opened, admitting Ben Foster. His face was grave. You need to see this. He connected his tablet to the main display, bringing up a series of classified documents. Remember how Tarn was evasive about those hybrid-descended meridians? I think I know why. The documents detailed a series of covert genetic experiments conducted by a faction within Meridian society. They had been secretly testing human-meridian hybrid compatibility for decades before first contact. That's impossible, Jasmine whispered. They only revealed themselves 18 months ago. Official first contact was 18 months ago, Ben corrected. But they've been watching us for much longer. The hybrid programs were their first attempts at solving their genetic crisis. Where did you get this? Ryla sent it. Jasmine tensed. Ryla was a young Meridian scientist who had joined their team a month ago, their crystalline form more stable than Tarn's despite being from a younger generation. Initially quiet, they had gradually begun sharing concerns about the Meridian Science Council's true motives. Does Tarn know? No, and Ryla risks dissolution for sharing it. Ben's expression hardened. There's more. The accelerated degradation. It's targeted. Only affecting certain segments of their population. The implications hit Jasmine like a physical blow. They're using it as a purge. The Science Council claims to be working for the preservation of their species, Ben said. But they're really ensuring only their chosen bloodlines survive. The degradation crisis is their excuse for accessing human genetic material. The lab's emergency containment shield slammed down without warning, sealing them inside. Tarn's voice echoed through the speakers. I truly wish to keep this civilized. They materialized from a corner of the lab, their crystalline form now dark and threatening. Jasmine hadn't even known they could cloak themselves. How long were you watching us? She demanded. Long enough. Tarn's form rippled with colors she'd never seen before, deep violets and blacks that seemed to absorb light. We had such hopes for you, Dr. Reeves. Your genetic research could have helped us perfect the hybridization process. To create a master race, Ben spat. While letting the rest of your people die. Evolution demands sacrifice. Surely you understand this. Your own species' history is written in the blood of those deemed less worthy. Jasmine's mind raced. The containment shields were designed to protect the rest of the facility if something went wrong in the lab. Now they were a prison. Ryla knows, she said. They'll expose you. Ryla has already been dealt with, Tarn's voice carried no emotion. Their sacrifice will advance our understanding of genetic dissolution significantly. Ben lunged for the emergency console, but Tarn moved with impossible speed. Their crystalline arm elongated, piercing his shoulder and pinning him to the wall. He cried out in pain as crystal began spreading from the wound. The hybridization process is fascinating, Tarn observed. Painful, but fascinating. Your bodies try so hard to reject the crystal integration. Security will be here any minute, Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice steady as she edged toward her workstation. Security is currently responding to a containment breach in the East Wing. A regrettable accident involving several volatile specimens. Very distracting. They had planned this. How long had Tarn been manipulating events, positioning pieces on the board? Why show your hand now, she asked, buying time as her fingers found the familiar keys behind her. Because in approximately 3 minutes, the genetic samples we've collected from your research will be transmitted to our ships in orbit. The data on forced crystalline integration. That's merely a bonus. The samples. Jasmine's blood ran cold. They had collected genetic material from hundreds of humans during their research, all carefully documented and stored. In the wrong hands. Your people will never agree to this, Ben gasped, crystal spreading across his chest. My people believe what the council tells them. A negotiated exchange of genetic material to save our species. By the time they learn the truth, the integration will have begun. Jasmine's fingers flew across her hidden keyboard, initiating an emergency purge of the sample storage. Tarn's form wavered as facility alarms began blaring. What have you done? Evolution demands sacrifice, Jasmine quoted coldly. I'm sacrificing 3 months of research to stop you from enslaving humanity. Tarn roared, a sound like shattering glass. Their form exploded into crystalline shards, filling the air with deadly projectiles. Jasmine dove behind her reinforced desk as the fragments ricocheted off walls and equipment. You cannot stop this, Tarn's voice came from everywhere at once. We have waited too long, prepared too carefully. A new sound cut through the chaos. A high-pitched resonance that made Jasmine's teeth ache. Tarn's scattered form vibrated, trying to reintegrate but failing. Through the crystalline storm, Jasmine saw Ryla in the observation window above the lab. Their form was damaged but stable, holding some kind of sonic device. The security overrides engaged, containment shields retracting. As armed response teams poured in, Jasmine ran to Ben. The crystal infection had stopped spreading, but nearly half his body was already transformed. "Hold on," she whispered, gripping his remaining human hand. "I'll find a way to reverse this. I promise." His eyes met hers, clear despite the pain. "Now we know why those hybrids were so hard to find." Around them, Tarn's crystalline fragments were being contained, their consciousness presumably still intact but helpless. But Jasmine barely noticed, her mind already racing through possible treatments for Ben. She had started this project hoping to save a species. Now she had to save her friend, and stop an invasion before it could begin. The quarantine ward hummed with medical equipment as Jasmine studied Ben's latest test results. The crystalline transformation had stopped at 60% of his body, leaving him in a state between human and meridian. Behind the isolation field, his partially crystalline form caught the light, refracting it in ways that still made her heart ache. "The neural integration is stabilizing," she reported, trying to keep her voice professional. "How's the pain?" "Manageable," Ben replied, though the strain in his voice suggested otherwise. "Have you told the Defense Council about the hybridization data yet?" "Director Sullivan is briefing them now." Jasmine manipulated the holographic display, highlighting areas of successful integration. "But we have more immediate concerns. 3 more Meridian ships just entered orbit. They're not going to just give up and go home, are they?" "No." Jasmine pulled up another display showing Ryla's latest intelligence. The young Meridian had become their most valuable ally, sharing details of their species' true plans. The Science Council has spent generations preparing for this. The genetic degradation, the hybridization research, it was all leading to this moment. A forced evolution of both species, Ben mused. His crystalline arm shifted, forming complex patterns that seemed to reflect his thoughts. "You know, it's almost elegant from a purely scientific perspective. Use the degradation crisis to gain access to human genetic material, then trigger a mass transformation under the guise of saving their species." "There's nothing elegant about genocide," Jasmine snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "Sorry. I can't stop thinking about how we played right into their hands. All that research we did, trying to help them, is now the key to stopping them," Ben finished. He pressed his human hand against the isolation field, the closest they could come to contact. "Your work on genetic stability isn't just about saving their species anymore. It's about saving both of ours." The lab's AI chimed an alert. "Dr. Reeves, Director Sullivan requests your presence in the Crisis Center immediately. Priority Alpha." Jasmine gathered her tablets. "I'll be back soon. Try to rest." "Wait." Ben's voice stopped her at the door. "The crystalline integration. I can feel it in my thoughts now. Ideas, concepts, that aren't entirely human anymore. What if?" "Don't," she cut him off. "You're still you. We'll find a way to reverse this." His smile was half human, half crystal. "Maybe we shouldn't. The answers we need might be in this integration. A middle path." Before she could respond, another alert blared through the facility. Multiple unauthorized crystalline signatures detected in sectors 3, 7, and 12. Security teams responding. They were already inside. Jasmine ran for the crisis center, her mind racing. The facility's corridors were chaos, security teams rushing past as evacuation orders echoed over the speakers. She reached the center just as Director Sullivan was organizing the response. "They're using the building's silicon infrastructure to materialize inside our defenses," he reported grimly. "Ryla says it's an ability only the highest-ranking Meridians possess." We've lost contact with 3 other research facilities worldwide. The main screen showed multiple Meridian ships taking up attack positions around Earth. Smaller displays tracked the spreading crystalline infections in population centers. How long? Jasmine asked. Before full-scale invasion. Hours at most. Unless. Unless what? Sullivan's expression was grave. Ryla suggested there might be a way to use the genetic degradation against them. Turn their own weapon back on them. But the cost would be genocide, Jasmine finished. We'd be no better than they are. Sometimes survival requires compromise. No. The voice came from the doorway. Ben stood there, supported by Ryla, his crystalline portions glowing with an inner light. There's another way. Dr. Foster, you're supposed to be in quarantine, Sullivan began, but Ben cut him off. The integration goes both ways, he said, his voice carrying harmonics similar to the Meridians. Their crystal computing, their genetic science, I can see it all now. Ryla's been helping me understand. The young Meridian stepped forward, their form steady despite the damaged patches. The Science Council's greatest fear was true cooperation between our species. Not dominance, but partnership. The hybrid program, Jasmine realized. It wasn't just about genetic stability. The naturally occurring hybrids found a balance that the Council couldn't control. Which is why they were eliminated, Ryla confirmed. But Dr. Foster's transformation has shown us the potential for controlled integration. Voluntary transformation that preserves both human and Meridian consciousness. A choice, Ben said. That's what they really feared. That given the option, their people would choose cooperation over conquest. Another alarm blared. Crystalline signatures detected in the building's main power core. Critical systems failing. We're out of time, Sullivan said. Whatever we're going to do. We need to get to the main lab, Ben interrupted. Jasmine, your work on genetic stability, combined with what I understand now about Meridian biology, we can create a retrovirus. Not to destroy them, but to force a choice. What kind of choice? Between remaining pure Meridian and accepting a true hybrid state. One that requires mutual consent between species. Jasmine's mind raced through the implications. The delivery system. Their own ships, Ryla said. The crystalline hulls are partially biological. They'll transmit the virus throughout their fleet. And if we're wrong? Sullivan demanded. If it doesn't work? Ben's human eye met Jasmine's while his crystalline one refracted with possibilities. Then at least we tried to find a better way. The lights flickered as more systems failed. Through the windows, Jasmine could see crystalline growths spreading across the Singapore skyline, beautiful and terrible. We'll need to reach the lab, she said. Through a building full of hostile Meridians. Ben's crystalline arm reformed into something that might have been a weapon. Good thing I'm getting better at this hybrid state then. Ryla's form shifted, preparing for battle. I will help you reach your lab. The future of both our species depends on it. Jasmine grabbed her research tablets. They had one chance to prevent an invasion and save 2 species from their worst impulses. The irony wasn't lost on her, their only hope for peace lay in the very integration they'd been fighting against. But this time, it would be a choice. The main lab was almost unrecognizable. Crystalline growths covered half the surfaces, pulsing with alien light. Jasmine worked furiously at her station while Ben and Ryla defended their position. Outside the reinforced doors, they could hear the crystal-on-crystal sound of hostile Meridians trying to breach their defenses. The retrovirus synthesis is at 80%, Jasmine reported, her fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. But we'll never reach the ship's biological systems from here. We need a direct connection to their network. Ben's partially crystalline form glowed as he maintained a barrier across the doors. The council members can transfer their consciousness through any crystalline structure. If I've inherited that ability. No. Jasmine knew what he was suggesting. The strain could shatter your hybrid form completely. We don't know if your integration is stable enough. We're out of options, he countered. Look. The main display showed Meridian ships launching invasion pods toward major cities. The crystalline infections were spreading exponentially, transforming infrastructure and, in some cases, unwilling humans. He's right, Ryla said, their form shifting to reinforce another section of wall. The Council will expect a technological attack or a biological weapon. They won't expect one of their own abilities to be used against them. But you're not one of them, Jasmine protested. The hybrid state is exactly what they fear. Ben's human eye met hers while his crystalline one pulsed with determination. Which means it's our best weapon. The lab's defenses shuddered under another assault. Through the crystalline growths, Jasmine could see multiple Meridian forms trying to phase through the walls. Their time was running out. Virus synthesis complete, the AI announced. Jasmine initiated the transfer to a containment field. The retrovirus glowed with a soft blue light, their last hope compressed into a few drops of liquid. The delivery system will only work if we can reach their command ship, she said. The biological cores of their entire fleet are networked through it. Ben stepped away from the door, his crystalline portions beginning to resonate at a frequency that made Jasmine's teeth ache. Then that's where I'm going. We're going, Ryla corrected. My consciousness can help stabilize yours during the transfer. A section of wall began to cave in. They were out of time. Jasmine. Ben's voice carried harmonics of both human and Meridian tones now. The integration, it was worth it. To understand both sides, to see a better way. She grabbed his human hand, pressing the viral containment unit into it. Just come back. Both of you. His crystalline eye pulsed once in acknowledgement. Then both he and Ryla seemed to dissolve, their forms becoming pure energy that raced through the crystalline growths covering the lab. The defensive barrier fell. Hostile Meridians poured into the lab, their forms dark and threatening. Jasmine raised her hands as Director Sullivan and the security teams burst in from the other entrance, weapons ready. Wait, she shouted to both sides. Just wait. On the main display, she could track Ben and Ryla's energy signatures racing through the crystalline networks, leaping from building to building, reaching toward the ships above. The Meridian soldiers surrounded her, but didn't attack, seemingly transfixed by what their senses were telling them about the hybrid consciousness racing through their network. Impossible, one of them said, their tone almost reverent. The integration, it's perfect. In space, Ben and Ryla reached the command ship. Jasmine held her breath as their signatures briefly vanished from the sensors. One chance. They had one chance to. The ship's crystalline hull began to glow. The light spread to other ships in the fleet, a cascade of illumination that turned the sky into day. In the lab, the hostile Meridians stopped, their forms rippling with new information flooding their network. What did you do? The lead Meridian demanded. Gave your people a choice, Jasmine said. The virus doesn't force transformation or prevent it. It just makes it impossible to transform unwilling hosts. True integration can only come from mutual consent. The Meridian soldiers' forms shifted through multiple colors as they processed this. Around the world, the crystalline infections began to recede from unwilling hosts while stabilizing in those who had accepted the change. The Council. One soldier began. Is being given the same choice as everyone else, Jasmine replied. Stay pure Meridian, or accept that evolution doesn't have to mean dominance. It can mean cooperation. The main display lit up with a new energy signature. Ben and Ryla were returning, their hybrid consciousness racing back through the network. They materialized in the lab, their forms changed but stable. Ben's human and crystalline portions had reached a perfect balance, while Ryla's form showed traces of human DNA expression. The fleet is standing down, Ben reported, his dual-toned voice tired but satisfied. When the council realized they couldn't force transformations anymore, their support crumbled. Their own people are demanding answers. And the degradation? Jasmine asked. The virus carries the fix for that too, Ryla said. No more forced evolution, just natural genetic stability. For both species. The Meridian soldiers looked at each other, then at Ben and Ryla. Slowly, their aggressive stances relaxed. We would, no more of this balance you have found, their leader said. That's what we were hoping for, Ben smiled, the expression carrying across both his human and crystalline features. The real work starts now. Learning to grow together, instead of trying to dominate each other. Outside, the sun was rising over Singapore. The crystalline growths caught the light, no longer threatening but beautiful, a symbol of possibility rather than invasion. Humans and Meridians were already gathering in the streets, scientists and soldiers alike drawn by the chance to understand each other. It won't be easy, Jasmine said, watching the dawn of a new era. We have so much to learn about each other. Ben's hybrid form resonated with harmony as he stood between species, no longer trapped between states but embracing both. The best evolution never is. But at least now we're free to choose our path forward. Together, Ryla added, their form shimmering with new potential. The price of tomorrow, Jasmine realized, wasn't measured in sacrifice or survival. It was measured in choices, in the courage to find better ways, and in the wisdom to understand that true strength comes not from dominance, but from the willingness to change together. Outside her lab's windows, the future dawned, crystalline and human, separate and together, full of challenges and possibilities. Just as it should be.